Hello students, and welcome to our soft field takeoff maneuver execution video. Before we jump into the cockpit, let's quickly discuss the objective of this maneuver and some key factors that we'll be focusing on. The objective of a soft field takeoff is to get the airplane airborne when departing from a runway that is not a hard surface, such as dirt or grass or whatever else it may be. It's not a hard concrete surface. There are certain techniques we're going to have to use to make this takeoff safe. The techniques that we're going to use today will show students how to keep the wheels from sinking into the soft surface of the runway and how to safely become airborne in ground effect, speed up in ground effect, and then exit it. In this maneuver execution video, we will not be covering detailed aerodynamics, maneuver diagrams, common student errors, or the ACS standards. This video is simply to explain and demonstrate the execution of the maneuver and will vary based on the aircraft that you are actually flying in your training. To see all of the additional details we just mentioned and to study this lesson's full-length presentation, podcast, diagrams, flashcards, lesson quiz, and more, just look up the soft field takeoff lesson on our website at wificfi.com. Lastly, before we jump into the cockpit, there are a couple of key factors that we need to cover regarding this maneuver. First, we're going to be starting on the taxiway and we're not going to be coming to a full stop on the runway. Now, if you've watched our normal takeoff video or our short field takeoff video, we got lined up with the runway, we came to a stop, we held our brakes and increased our power. In this situation, we are not going to be doing that because we don't want the weight of our aircraft to sink into the runway. So what we're actually going to do is, even during the taxi, we're going to be holding our flight control yoke or stick back, and we're gently going to be taxiing onto the takeoff runway without coming to a stop. Included in this is we're going to be taking off with increased flap settings for shorter takeoff distance, and we're also going to have less weight on the wheels since we have those flaps in. We're going to have to be checking the engine gauges while we're on the roll. Again, we're not going to be checking them at a dead stop. We're going to be maintaining centerline while we're waiting for the airplane to become airborne. Again, there's not a rotate speed here because we've got that yoke held back, so the airplane is going to become airborne at a low, slow speed whenever it is ready. Once it becomes airborne, we're going to remain in ground effect by lowering the nose and accelerating to VX or VY as appropriate. If you have obstacles ahead of you, you're going to use VX. If you don't, you can use VY. Today, we're going to accelerate in ground effect to a VY speed of 74 knots. We're then going to transition and climb away from the runway at that VY, and then at a safe altitude and airspeed, we will retract the flaps and continue our VY climb, at which point we will finally transition to our cruise climb speed of 85 knots and complete the after takeoff checklist. So that's everything we're going to be covering today. Let's head out to the airplane and let's execute this maneuver. Alrighty, so here we are at our airplane, about ready to take off runway 20 to do our soft field takeoff. Now, before we do that, I kind of want to show you where we're at in the process, how we've got our airplane set up. So on our other videos, on our other takeoff videos, you've seen us just kind of start right on the runway. Here we're going to be starting on the taxiway because we're going to be rolling straight onto the runway. We're going to keep our roll going right through the takeoff. There's going to be no stopping on the runway. We're going to be holding back pressure with the yoke. You can see how my elevator goes up. We're holding back pressure with the yoke as we roll onto the runway, and throughout the entire takeoff roll, we're kind of just going to be riding a wheelie down the runway to go ahead and get airborne. You can also see that we've already got our flaps here set to 10. Now, the runway we're going to be taking off, let me see if I can go ahead and show it to you. It is the one that is kitty corner over here, not the one that is directly perpendicular to us. So we're going to be rolling on runway 20. We're going to keep the power going. Once we get on, we get aligned, we've got our wind correction, everything like that. We're smoothly just going to go full power, kind of riding a wheelie down the runway until we become airborne. At which point when we become airborne, we're going to lower our nose and stay in ground effect, and we'll kind of talk about that as we get to it. How we've got our cockpit set up here, you know that we love to use the heading and altitude bugs. So we've got those bugged. We've bugged our runway heading at 200, and we've bugged our initial altitude of 6,500 feet you can see that we do have our flaps set for 10, and we're gonna go ahead and get our trim set for takeoff. We got our lights on, mixture set, everything else is ready to go. The last thing I want to say before we do this is we're going to be checking our engine gauges on the right hand side of the screen. Now usually I zoom in and check the engine gauges, but I'm going to be focused on staying on the center line of the runway, so we're not going to have this camera view. But at the 2000 RPM, or as we're rolling down the runway, we are going to check our engine gauges and make sure that everything is in the green. If it's not, we'll obviously abort the takeoff, but if it is, we'll go ahead and continue the takeoff. Okay, so I have got my yoke back, so I've got that back pressure on the yoke, and we're just gonna roll right on to runway 20 here, and I'm probably actually gonna do this from the exterior view. It's a little bit easier here on the sim. Adding some power as we're gonna be taxiing to 20. So we've already obviously done our before takeoff check, our run up check. We've got our clearance from ATC to do this takeoff, so we're just gonna roll on over here to 20, runway 20. Now this isn't actually a soft build, right? We are just simulating that it is. Okay, so here is our runway 20. Let's go ahead and hop back in the cockpit. We've got our back pressure on our yoke. We're gonna go ahead and nice and smoothly go full power. We're watching our engine gauges. Okay, everything is in the green. We're good for takeoff. Our airspeed is live. We are holding our yoke back right now, so we're going to become airborne at a slower speed. As we do, we're just going to hold our aircraft down here in ground effect, nice and close, so we don't get that extra drag until we speed up to our VY speed of 74, at which we can go ahead and trim and climb out at our VY. Just like so. Alrighty. Once we are a couple hundred feet up here, we've got good airspeed, we've got good altitude, we can pop out. As always, we go ahead and retract our flaps. It was a little bit turbulent today, so we're just dealing with the turbulence as we're flying. Heading, and we're still climbing on our altitude. And lastly, we're going to go ahead, kind of start to lower the nose and speed up to that cruise climbing airspeed of 85, so we get some better forward visibility, and we can get some better engine cooling as well. So we're kind of trimming down. We've got our heading, our altitude. Everything's looking good. It's starting to smooth out a little bit. As you can see, we'll go ahead and trim that nose down. Get back in the cockpit. Make sure we're staying level. It's kind of hard to jump back in and out with that camera view. Here we are, at which point we could go ahead and complete the items on our after takeoff checklist. So that right there is the procedure for getting off of a soft filled safely. Okay, getting off of it, making sure that our nose wheel or our wheels do not sink on the runway. We want as much weight on the wings as possible. Just kind of riding that wheelie down the runway. Getting airborne soon, but not leaving ground effect until we have sufficient speed, whether that be VX or VY. We didn't have obstacles today, so we decided to go with VY, and we have departed right on out of our airport. That is our soft field takeoff. Head back in the cockpit. I'm sure everything's all screwed up now. We'll get it fixed back. So thanks for joining us for that soft field takeoff lesson, and we will see you guys on the next lesson soon.